Hey guys, today we're going to talk about something that every single Facebook advertiser out there has gone through, and that is what to do if my ads stop performing. And some of these ads have gone through the slow burn, where they kind of slowly stop performing over time. Sometimes you have the drop off where suddenly they're just not performing. And sometimes you have the roller coaster where they perform and then they don't perform, and they perform and they don't perform. And there are answers to each one of these issues. And what we're going to do today, there's really two parts of this. The first part is finding what the problem is. And the great thing about digital marketing is we have all the data, so we can do this. We can actually pinpoint the exact point of issue. And then the second part of this, which we're not going to handle so much in today's episode, but that is actually coming up with the tests to go through to get that one metric kind of back on track. And sometimes there's 2, 3, 4 different hypotheses for why that metric is off track. And that is where you really need to kind of build out a little bit of this testing plan to kind of see exactly what's moving the needle. But all of these things are possible to have much more certainty around your Facebook ad performance and to get them in a stable place where you have a good foundation and you get off the roller coaster, you get to where you can start anticipating the slow burn and taking action ahead of time. And then if you have the drop off of performance, usually there's 1 or 2 things that just completely changed. And upon getting those things back on track, boom, your performance goes back. So without further ado, we'll dig in here. I'm excited to go through these documents with you guys. So here we are in the first document. This is a lot of data. I know it probably looks really overwhelming, but I'm going to explain it. And if you're listening on the podcast, again, it's probably going to be a little bit harder to follow along with this one. So I would encourage you to head on over to YouTube and check out the screen sharing version. So this is actually real data for a client that we've been working with, a potential client, and we were told that there was basically 3 periods of time with their account history, and there was kind of the before where things were working pretty well. They were hitting a 2.71 ROAS overall from August through October, and they were really happy with this. Their goal is around a 3, but they were happy with a 2.71, and then unfortunately the person managing their account had to leave the company, and the founder had to take over in November, and you can see that the ROAS was kind of slipping. Honestly, November of this year was a tough time to advertise, and so the advertiser chose to bring an agency on board, and that has been going on from December through current, which today is February 18th, 2021. And you can see here that the ROAS has dropped all the way down to 1.21, which is really bad. And this advertiser knows what's possible because they've hit it here in the past, but they're not sure what is going on or what the problem is. So here we are in the first document. This looks like a lot of data, I know. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, this is probably going to be a little hairy for you to keep up with. But again, please head on over to YouTube and you can see the screen share version where you can actually see the data here with me. So I'll walk you through all the different sections here that we have, and then we'll look through all the different metrics that we're gathering here and talk about what this means to me as a media buyer. So the client has 3 different periods, we'll say. There's kind of the before, where things were working well. Their goal is around a 3, but they were hitting 2.71, which they were happy with. And then a person who was managing their ads actually had to leave the company. So we see in November, the founder tried to kind of take over the ads. It was not her main focus, and she found it difficult. So you can see here that the ROAS was slipping down to 1.95. And so she decided to go ahead and bring on an agency. And that's what's been going on since December through now, which today is February 18th. And we can see that actually the ROAS has dropped pretty significantly down to 1.21, which is not good, not in the right direction, not profitable. And so she really needs to take action. And so the first thing that we wanted to do is try to understand what is the overall story here. And that's what I want you to hear today. That this is not about you figuring out this one client that I'm going to be showing you. It's not about any one of these metrics. The real point of this is to look at the data and be able to tell the story, to understand what the story is. So we're going to talk through a few of these metrics. I won't take you through all of them, I promise. For those of you just listening, we have average order value, CPM, spend, impressions, click-through rate, landing page drop-off, which is the percentage of people who never make it to the page load. Usually this is, the higher this is, the longer it takes for the page to load. And then we have site visits, add to carts, initiate checkouts, purchases, conversion value, which is the same as revenue, conversion rate, and ROAS. And then we have a few other rates here, the add to cart rate, the initiate checkout rate, the add to cart to initiate checkout rate, and the initiate checkout to purchase rate. So lots of data, and what we're really looking for here again is what changed month over month. So there's a few things. Let's dive in here. So the first thing obviously is ROAS, but all of the other metrics play into this. Another thing that I see right off the bat is this average order value, and it's gone up. That's great. It's gone up from around $37 to around $51, and that held steady in the third period. Well, so that's interesting. Our average order value is going up, but our ROAS is dropping off significantly. So then we look at our conversion rate, and we see, you know, we would expect if there's a little bit higher average order value, then that makes sense the conversion rate might drop down some, and we do see this. We see from period 1 to period 2, where the average order value went from 37 to 50, we see the conversion rate dropping from 7 to around 6. Well, that's not such a crazy drop considering that we just added on $15 of an average order value, which is awesome. But you can see that this actually drastically drops off when we look at period 3. We're at a 1.76. So we dropped from a 7% to under a 2% during this time frame, and that's going to be super difficult to bounce back from, basically. If we stay at a 1.76% conversion rate, there's probably not a whole lot that we'll be able to do to help the account. So a couple of other things that are super interesting. The click-through rate, look at this. The click-through rate goes from 0.72%, it goes up to 0.97%, and again goes up to 1.25%. So we are driving the highest click-through rates that we've ever driven in this account, or rather their agency is, but their conversion rate is drastically lower, which tells me, and again with the story, what is the story here? Well, it looks like that probably the quality of traffic that they're driving is too low, that it's actually dropped off significantly. So even though people are clicking more, they're not engaged people who are likely to buy. So the first thing that I would look at is the audience strategy and the account structure, and also the types of campaigns that the account is running. So if you have a drop-off and you have changed something in your account structure or in your type of campaigns that you're running, anything on those lines, or perhaps really big audience changes, this could be an issue here. But there's another thing that I see, and that is this add to cart rate. So we're at 22% here. We go up to 30% for this November period. But then we drop down drastically for this third period. So again, this third period just really supports that we're driving a lot more people, but people who are not interested in actually going through the flow and purchasing. So that holds true to the story. But what's the story here? Because we see a higher average order value, we see a slightly lower conversion rate, but not too concerning. We see a higher click-through rate, we see a higher add to cart rate. So what's going on? Well, look at this number, the CPM. The CPM went up from $6 to $13, over double. So that makes sense, right? Our ROAS was not cut in half, so we're paying double for every click that, in every, well, not even every click, but every 1,000 impressions that we have, we're paying double for those. Yes, our click-through rate has gone up a little bit. All of these metrics have gone up, but not enough to counteract double the cost at the very beginning of the flow. So that makes a lot of sense. And you can see here that CPM drops right back off, so that is not any kind of a factor in this story in period 3. We cannot blame that on the CPM. Yes, it's a little bit higher than it was in the first period, But again, so much evidence here supporting that even though we're getting more clicks, they're not engaged clicks, nothing that we would want to build this account off of. So I want to take you into the second sheet here. This is our funnel optimizer tracker. And basically it's all the same metrics that we just saw, and we picked the date range here of the December through current, where this advertiser has been working with an agency. And we can see here that we built these into an actual formula. So we can change these numbers and see what could happen. So for example, if we change this to 2%, we see here that this ROAS comes out to be 1.93. So just switching that right back, because a big jump up to 2% may or may not be likely, especially if you remember that my hypothesis here was that we probably weren't accessing really high quality users. And if we started accessing higher quality users, it's possible that this click-through rate will go down. So a couple of things that I want to play around with here. So I think that this is a big one. If we could get this up to 20%, this is what we call our funnel optimizer tracker. And what it allows us to do is actually play with the numbers and see, okay, if we change this, what happens to this? What's the next step? And this isn't perfect, actually. I realize that this is a little bit off from what we were saying in the last slide, but it will give you a basic idea of what we're doing here. So our CPM dropped down to $7.80. I'm happy about that. Our average order value stayed high. Great. Our click-through rate, I probably don't want to play with, because if you remember, the first period had a much lower click-through rate but a much higher ROAS, which means that the users had a higher intent. So I think that our click-through rate is probably even higher than it will be once we get that intent up. And then, you know, we have these other metrics here. So that's kind of all the front-end metrics on Facebook. And I don't think that there's anything that we could probably, any lever that we could pull that would make a huge difference there, other than obviously getting the right kind of quality traffic in. But the real thing that stares at me here is this add to cart rate. So watch what this does. Whenever we move this back up to 20%, boom. We just went from 1.15 to 2.88 by getting the add to cart rate up. Now, we would attack that from two angles. Obviously, the angle of the quality of traffic coming through the funnel, but also looking at what friction there might be on the landing page. Let's say that we can only get this up to 15%. And then let's say that we actually do end up being able to increase the click-through rate, for example, to 1.4%. You can see here that this goes up to around 2.42. That's still closer to the goal. And you can play around with some other metrics here. I have this conversion rate staying at 1.76, but obviously we hope to get this up as we get the right kind of users through the flow. So, you know, middle ground during period 2, we were a little above a 5% conversion rate. So let's go even low. Let's go lower than that just to be conservative. If we go with a 4%, for example, oh, this did not do what I thought it would do. Let's see, my formulas must be messed up here. 4% purchases, let's do this, equals site visitors times conversion rate. There we go. Now we're up above a 3x ROAS. So this might seem like complete math to you, and it is, unfortunately, for many, but this is the key to success. And furthering a little bit further, we have what we call our ROAS. Oh, it's already blown up for me here. This is our ROAS calculator, but looking at Google and Facebook. And we have a couple of things here for a client. We have real data, what we're experiencing. I actually just pulled this week for a client. And you can see here that on Facebook, their ROAS is around 1.54. We're midway through the month, a little bit more than midway through the month here. And for our purposes, I combined all cold traffic, which is prospecting, and then all warm plus DPA. And we've just put in formulas again for daily spend. This is actually not daily spend, this is total spend, so we can just put spend here. And then the ROAS for each level, and then we built a little formula to where the overall ROAS pops out. And then we did the same for Google, and you can see that we're breaking down brand, non-brand, YouTube, DSA, shopping, and all of the different spends and ROAS amounts. And then we have the overall Google ROAS here. And then we've totaled this between the platforms with a formula again, and we've popped out with 2.14. Now, I thought that I needed to be able to get this client to 2.5. It turns out that they're really happy with all of the cold and new to brand users that we're sending. You can see here, this is a 70% split on cold users here, and that we have a really nice, not only non-brand, but also branding on YouTube, and then some other, a little bit lower down the funnel, DSA and shopping campaigns here. It turns out the client is totally okay with this number, but our original goal was 2.5. And I presented to them that if it was really, really urgent for us to hit goal, it would be really easy for us just to pull some more traffic from brands. We're actually limited by budget on brand on Google. So without changing all the different metrics here, we can just, guesstimate that, let's say that we could spend 11,000 during this period. Well, that jumps the ROAS up to over 4 on Google, and then we went up from, let's see, what were we at, 2.14 up to this 2.34. So we're really, really close to the goal now. And imagine if we, just wanted to play around, just, to kind of show what's possible here. If we're able to spend $5,000 more on brand for the month, then we're right there at goal. So this is obviously an easy answer. It's not always so easy. And the real magic comes when you actually break down a full funnel for each one of these segments. But you can see that all of the data is here, that we have the right answers, that we have something that we can actually point to and say, we move this and this happens. And I think that that's the control that a lot of media buyers and a lot of media agencies and a lot of advertisers would love to have over Facebook ads, and it really is possible. So if you have any questions, let me know. We're going to keep digging into things like this and diving into the data to help make you guys more confident with your media buys. So thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.